Hello everybody, it's week 9 and I hope the semester is treating you well. As usual, wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about what you can expect from the last parts of chapter 21, all of chapter 2, and just a little bit of chapter 23. So let's go ahead with that. When you're reading about things like the political reforms, and in particular the initiative that the progressives advocated for so much, you really see that they had a lot of faith in voters' sense, or the sense of the voters. And one of the things I'd like you to think about is whether or not that trust has been misplaced, because we've seen a lot of initiatives, and we're probably seeing some this election cycle also, probably not what the progressives had in mind, and maybe not being executed the way that the progressives would have wanted them. Because the initiatives can be done by pretty much anybody, it means that anyone who has $1 million can essentially get their own law on the books. So I'm wondering if you think that causes an inequity in the system that the progressives really didn't count on and would not have found desirable. So does it mean that the progressives failed in the sense of trying to do reforms that created more democracy? Have they in fact, or those reforms, have they created less democracy? So I want you to think about that. Chapter 22, it is a lot about the conservative backlash to the progressives, but a lot of that comes in the context of the United States involvement in World War I. And people getting tired of the high-minded idealism of Woodrow Wilson and others. So you might want to think about the divisions within the socialist movement, the divisions within the organized labor movement, the xenophobia that is continuing in California and in particular towards Japanese. And this is well ahead of Pearl Harbor and the internment camps. It's happening, in the 1910s and the 1920s. When you look at the Mooney case and the Preparedness Day bombing, I think it's a pretty good example of the kind of hysteria or xenophobia or fear of anything that's radical. And I think that's typical of a lot of things that are going on in American history during the 1920s. If you want to look in the bibliography of this chapter, it'll give you some other ideas about sources that you could read if you wanted to find out more about that. But for our purposes, I'd like you to just take a look at the Mooney trial and how it's really seen as a miscarriage of justice. Chapter 23, what you're going to read of it this week is talking about the oil industry in California. Not something that we think a lot about in Northern California, but in Southern California it's certainly a serious part of their economy, was then, is now. And then a little later on it's going to get into the automobile industry. And obviously that's going to have all sorts of ramifications for California and for the United States. All right, happy reading. See you soon.